minutes. And it took another 15 before she told me, oh, we're out of soup. And, you know, anyone else would just kind of grouse about it for the rest of their life. I'm not grousing. I'm just relaying.
Just writing stories and killing off all the characters. That's what it is.
You know, talking about stories like that. You know, that was one of the things that drove me nuts about the movie business. That the advantage of what we do, I suppose, to us, is that we just make it up out of whole cloth. I mean, that's, you know, I saw a review of a novel recently in which the guy said, I don't understand this writer. It's just like he's making it all up. Well, yeah, that's kind of the way it works.
That's how it works.
Advantage for us. When you're dealing with film and television, the problem is the crowd involved in getting something done is so large, and everybody's got something to say, but there is no objective standard. If you're dealing in finance or quantum physics, there are things that are right and there are things that are wrong, and there is objective truth. And what you're trying to do is to reason your way through objective truth to come to a conclusion. With writing, there's nothing right. I mean, it's you never know. There's a guy named William Goldman, who's one of the great screenwriters of all time, wrote a little book called Adventures in the Screen Trade, in which he propounded Goldman's iron law of Hollywood. And that was, nobody knows anything.
Yep.
And that's true. But
it seems to be 90%, probably more like 99% who you know.
Well, I mean, certainly that, but you still, there's the mechanics of working on a script and getting a movie out there. And the problem is that if nobody knows anything, then everybody's opinion is of equal value.
Yep.
And that produces this sort of mass of silly putty. And it's just nonsensical. I just hated it. I mean, you sit there and you talk to people, well, instead of two kids in North Carolina, what if we make the hero a black astronaut? Seriously, that actually happened once. What if he doesn't die in the end? Well, that might be a good story. It's not the one I wrote. It's a different story. Maybe it's a better story. I don't know. Do you know? No, I don't know either. So, you know, it's just, you go round and around in a circle. The thing I loved about sitting down and writing a Big Mango, it was liberating because it was mine.
Right.
Between covers. It sits on a bookshelf up there. No one is going to buy it and say, gee, you know, you really ought to change the ending. I'll buy it if you'll change the ending, but otherwise I don't want it. That it is what it is. That's right. And that's to me, that's liberating. I wrote this book. I hope you'll read it. I hope you'll like it. Oh, I didn't much like it. Okay, no problem. That's fine.
Right.
But we don't negotiate about it. It is what it is.
Inspector Tay, as I said, kind of breaks a lot of tropes and stereotypes of detective novels. Was that conscious, or is that just kind of who is in your head?
He just sort of grew. I mean, the origin of the ambassador's wife was I can't think of her name. I met her subsequently. The woman who was outed as a CIA agent, and her husband was sent to confirm the existence of weapons of mass destruction. Joe Wilson, I remember his name, and he did confirm them, and it turned out that his wife was actually a CIA undercover agent, and when she was outed, several people were charged with having outed her, and it got very political anyway. Valerie Plum, that was it.
Valerie, right, yes.
Okay.
So that was the inspiration of the book. I mean, I just thought it was interesting that what would happen if you had an ambassador whose wife was a CIA agent. And that was sort of the setup here. But of course, at the beginning of the novel, she's dead. So she plays a very small role other than as a background.
Right.
The idea of Sam was was kind of developed as it went along. I mean, I find characters grow. I'm sure you have the same effect, is that the characters sometimes go places you don't really expect them to go.
Very much so.
Shut up and do what I told you to do, but they don't.
Exactly. And I think there are two types of writers. I think there are some who sit, they plan it all out, they decide what their character is, their traits, their this, their that. You know, do I want to, some would consciously say, I want to break the trope or the stereotypes. But my writing is like yours. I sit down and start writing, and it sounds, you know, and they do things that I didn't tell them to do. I often joked about someone named Angus in my books. He caused me so much trouble. And he's a good guy. He's a cop. He does rescue work, like in the mountains. And he caused me so much trouble because he just walked in one day, sat down on a stump and started talking. And I'm like, who are you? Well, I'm Angus. I'm the cop from the end of the last book, you fool.
For years, I thought, okay, this is getting serious. You know, I sold a whole bunch of books, and a lot of people know me. And so, okay, this time I'm going to sit down and write an outline. I'm going to do this right. I have never been able to do that. It's just nothing happens. The only way I can generate characters who seem real, doing real things, is to just push them out there. And you know, Lee Child famously talked about being a pantser, as opposed to being
one of his favorite authors.
But I have no idea how to do it any other way. I mean, it's not a conviction on my part. It's just the only thing I know how to do.
You know, I'm curious, you live in Bangkok, but your book, well, The Ambassador's Wife is primarily set in Singapore, and Tay lives in Singapore. Why did you choose Singapore instead of Bangkok?
Well, I had another series, which we haven't talked about here, the Jack Shepherd series, which was set primarily here. And I'd written 6 books in that series. So it was just, you know, I couldn't think of a detective series set in Singapore. So I thought maybe it was fresh ground and we would try that. As the Tay series moves on, however, he moves off that base a little bit, and eventually he's forced into retirement, and so he ends up doing stuff at other places as well, Hong Kong and here and other places in Thailand. Singapore is a difficult place to write about. It's a very self-conscious little society. The Dead American, which was one of the Tay novels, was really based on a true story about an American lad who allegedly committed suicide in Singapore, while it was widely thought that perhaps he had been murdered because he knew too much about a certain Chinese company and research that they were doing. And that raised really significant problems when I wrote it, because there was a huge backlash in some quarters. And a good friend who was at that time an ambassador from a country I will not name called me up one day and said, I think you better stay out of the country.
I was wondering, yes.
Intelligence people tell me you're going to be arrested if you come back. Which I would have laughed at, except there was a British author, I'm freezing on his name now, but he came to Singapore to deliver a lecture, and he was arrested and imprisoned for a year for having one Singaporean thoughts. And it's a tough place. And from that point on, my books were banned from Singapore bookstores. And they wouldn't allow them to be sold there.
And so are you effectively banned from Singapore now?
Yeah, you know, I don't know. The honest truth is that being told you can't go back to Singapore is sort of like being told you can never have another colonoscopy. There's an upside and a downside. I don't have any desire to go back, so I never really thought about it. But I'd probably be careful. It's been years. I mean, it's been 15 years or so, but there's a self-consciousness. Singapore masquerades as a liberal democracy when it is anything but. It is a tough totalitarian society, which has produced economic miracles because of being a tough totalitarian society. But they don't like being told that they're not the best in the world. And when the Tay books came out, even The Ambassador's Wife, the basic criticism of it locally was it didn't say that the cops were the greatest cops in the whole world. Tay was very skeptical. He knew some corrupt cops. He knew some stupid cops, and nobody wanted to hear that. So there was a certain amount of backlash. There were several quite prominent newspaper stories and magazine stories done about the backlash there. It doesn't affect my life. I mean, it's not a complaint on my part, but it's kind of interesting. I've never.
Well, it really is.
Another conversation.
Yeah, it comes up over and over, and in The Ambassador's Wife, the cultural differences is that I wondered how much of that is Inspector Tay himself, like he really doesn't like Americans, even though his father is one. Is this just who he is? Does he have father issues? Is it the way Singapore's society is?
No, I think there are no personal issues in there. It's really just more a matter of Singaporeans are vaguely suspicious of outsiders. And Tay is half an outsider because his father was an American, which I thought was kind of interesting. And you see that suspicion all the time. Singaporeans are generally quite friendly. They pride themselves on being a racially diverse society, which they are not. They pretend to be.
I wouldn't think so.
It's entirely Chinese driven, ethnic Chinese, but they'll trot out one or two Indians and a couple of Malays just to show how diverse they are. But those people have nothing to do with running the place. It's run by overseas Chinese, and some of them have run it very well. I mean, Lee Kuan Yew was the great father of Singapore who created it out of nothing. And it is a miraculous place in terms of economic growth. But most Singaporeans have swapped their soul for prosperity. And it's a deal they were happy to make. So if you sort of think that, well, they're not happy, they are happy with that deal. They like that deal. That's a very Chinese kind of thing, I think, without getting into the ethnicity there. You give me prosperity and you can have my soul. And Singaporeans generally respond well to that. Tay, being half American, suspects that's a lousy bargain. And he mentions it all the time, which is where he comes from.
From what we talked about before we actually started filming, you actually did live in a house next door to Farrah Fawcett.
I did indeed. This is. I drew Charlie Truss not from me so much, but I drew the house from a house that I lived in on Carbon Beach, next to Farrah and Ryan, for a couple of years at about this period of time. And I guess I just naturally write about stuff that I have experienced, that I know. And so most of the anecdotes in the first Charlie Truss novel were true. I mean, there's one buried much further in about Dean Martin coming to the door one day, looking for the guy who owned the house. Actually happened. I go over the door, Dean Martin is standing there. And stuff like that. Bumping into Larry Hagman, who I got to know fairly well at a bar, a Mexican restaurant that I used to go to. There's an anecdote further in about O.J. Simpson and Simpson being brought over and introduced to Charlie, and Simpson saying, "Well, I'm glad to hear you're great. If I ever need a criminal lawyer, I know who to call now."